welcome to this panel on club management. So thank you very much for joining. I've heard that most of the panels here and discussions are in Spanish, but we're going to do it in English, and looking forward for that. I think it's one of the few panels where we also have guests with Canadian experience, US experience, and obviously our hosts here in Mexico. So once more, thank you very much, World Football Summit, for taking together such an exciting panel, because, you know, as a moderator, it's always cool to find questions when you do it for panels related to club management, because it's pretty straightforward with such a stellar and distinguished guests. So I'm happy to have Zineb, Ricardo, and Andrew for this panel. And I think we have a lot of interesting knowledge here and experience, which we aim to also share together with you. So thank you very much for joining the panel. And I would like to actually go straight to the point and asking our guest, Zineb. You might have seen on the app and her experience. And I wanted to actually ask you about differences and similarities. And usually it's pretty simple to ask about what are the common things between the different countries, because Zineb has an extensive experience in different countries and also in different functions. And that's very helpful when it comes to club management. So I wanted to actually ask you, you have experience as a player, you had experience as a manager, you had experience also as engaged in transfers. So I wanted to, the obvious thing would be to ask you about the differences. But here I'd like to ask you, what are the similarities between the different markets you operated in different functions? So from a managerial perspective, what are the common traits shared across the transition?
Sure. Well, thank you very much, and happy to be here in Monterrey, and thanks to World Football Summit for the invitation. So obviously, like, you kind of, when you look at different regions, I mean, football cultures vary across region, but down the line, if you look at North America, if you look at Latin America, Europe, or Middle East, I mean, it comes down to alignment, right? How you are successful as a club, for example, is how you're aligning your football, your commercial, your operational strategy to make sure that everything's, you know, flows from that perspective. I think also what's important is really from, I would say, having that understanding what's your mission, understanding what's your sense of purpose. I mean, as a club, you know, when we advise certain clubs, we need to understand, like, are they coming as a youth hub? Are they coming as, you know, kind of a community pillar? Are they a global brand? And everything that they do flows from that identity. So this is actually quite key in terms of how we advise and support them. So from a football jersey, I would say whatever jersey you're wearing, you know, to be successful for me, I mean, across all those different aspects we have been advising was mostly down to having a cohesive strategy, having a shared vision, measuring everything you're doing with KPIs that you can actually be able to amend anything, and also kind of the consistency of leadership. And obviously kind of wearing different hats at different, I would say, stage in my careers. I think, you know, what makes sense across all is you understand whether you're a club, you're an agency, or you're as a player. What's important is what you do on the pitch, but also off the pitch. And I think across all, that's how we're trying to approach everything here.
Well, I think the reason why I wanted to ask you this question is precisely because in club management, I observe that in reality, it's often the same ingredients you need to use. And taking the analogy of here in Mexico of the tortilla, you have the tortilla, which is the shell, and taking the analogy with a club football would be the backbone, the club backbone of its infrastructure. So basically the infrastructure. Then what you have is what I would call it the protein. So basically you have the meat or the chicken or the beans or the fish eventually, which would be what you mentioned, the players, the characters, the different characteristics that plays around here, and the identity, which is obviously very, very important. And then probably what makes, and you are the expert guys in the room around tortillas, I'm sure, about the toppings. So, you know, which salsa, which guacamole, what are the onions, the cilantro, the lime, which are actually what makes the taste of this working together. the staff, taking the analogy of a club football, the staff, the coaching, and the culture, and obviously having the local flavor. Thank you, Zineb, for that. And moving on to Andrew, so moving to San Diego. It's very actually interesting. I don't know if you follow the creation and the story around San Diego. So we're delighted to have you on board here for this panel, because it's a very original to have this. And my question for you is obviously related to the creation of San Diego, and especially from a expertise that you have, the data and the strategy. So it's San Diego for the crowd is the newest franchise to join MLS. And so actually, how San Diego has been set up, and what are the key differences between the two operations run? Because we have been very critical learnings for you on how to set up actually a team from scratch. And you also had, maybe you can point it out, because you have experience at the New England Revolution. So did it help to set up and start the new club?
Yeah, I think the number one benefit of the expansion process in Major League Soccer is that we get to learn from everyone else's mistakes and also successes. So there's an element of that, but having come from the Revolution, which are an original 1996 MLS franchise, there's key learnings that can be taken from that. The number one thing that we wanted to focus on in building San Diego was people. And then you bring in the right people, they establish the right process. It's similar to any other startup that you would work in, right? Like, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of getting things wrong before you get them right, and we're still in a learning process just halfway through our first season. But the fastest expansion timeline of any club without a history in USL, we had to start up a team in 18 months and build the staff from 1 to now over 130. We have a world-class training facility out in El Cajon, east of San Diego, that will house both the academy and the first team, and currently sitting second in the Western Conference halfway through our first season. So I think we've exceeded expectations by the standard metrics, and then internally, if we look under the hood, the people and the processes are beginning to be established, sort of creating org-wide accountability through establishing key, what we call OKRs, objectives and key results, which keep every line item of the business on track. And from that perspective, we've, I think, checked all the boxes, but naturally, as an ambitious ownership group, having a combination of international from London and then local, to the first ever professional sports franchise to have Native American ownership, the idea is not just to continue along the status quo, but we outline this in the first line of our mission, is become the epicenter of football excellence and innovation in all of North America. Along with that goes us establishing the Right to Dream Academy, first one in North America, taking those same principles that have built our academies in Africa and in Scandinavia to such success, establishing that here. And we believe that that's a key differentiator for San Diego over other MLS teams. But as we know, look at the LA Galaxy this season, having won the Cup last year, starting this season winless through their first 15 matches. So MLS is an interesting animal for sure. So, but all things are pointing in the right direction.
Cool. I actually continue on that, because the case of MLS is very, very interesting. And I think, can you imagine yourself, you started with running a marathon. So basically you don't have, usually when you do the jogging, you start with the 5K, then you do go for the 10K. And now you start with a marathon. So no small steps. You go straight to the quality, which is MLS is certainly a rather quite unique example in the world to do that with the expansion model. But can you talk us through about the process of organizing the high performance competitive football club from zero?
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky to have high level executives with prior expansion experience namely our CEO, Tom Penn, who was involved in starting LAFC. Now, the concept of being a CEO of a professional football club, you would think, right, is just running, you know, you're running a balance sheet, you're running a P&L, and you're running a group of people, right? Not necessarily. Tom had taken so many learnings from his experience at LAFC, whether that's working with local governments and establishing their intent to build their stadium, whether it was his prior experience in law. You know, he has a very interesting background coming from the NBA, transitioning to being an on-TV personality at ESPN, and then coming back into the front office world. So it really, like I always come back to, it starts with the people, and Tom has done the utmost to make sure that San Diego is in a good position to be successful. And at that point, I think the idea that collectively, as a group of people, we had come together to build a professional football club from scratch, there's an automatic buy-in, I think, there that everyone was on the same page, and a lot of long nights, a lot of long days. And I think I heard from a colleague, one of my good friends from LAFC, and he said, things don't begin to get normal until halfway through your second season. So not to say that I'm counting down, but...
He was very optimistic. Cool. Thank you, Andrew, for that. And last but not least, we're extremely delighted to have a team president from York. So having the example from Canada and maybe some cold, fresh ideas would be good from Mexico. Because basically from Mexico to Canadian Premier League, it's also very interesting. So why actually did you choose to go to Canada? And despite of the fact that you have also this Mexican background, and I guess also Southern America offers a lot of growth opportunities. What were the factors that specifically drew you to Canada?
Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction, Oliver. And there were many things, like starting from the fact that maybe most of you people in this room here don't know much about the Canadian Premier League or Canada landscape, like in general, right, soccer-wise. So in a sense, it's a very green, raw market with tons of potential. And obviously economically, say, I don't know, maybe top 8, top 10 economic country in the world. So the potential Canada has, and some of you may recognize it through their men's and women's national teams, in the sense that how could all of a sudden these national teams be that good without a domestic league? Going back to when the Premier League started 2019, I think there were just 3 or 4 other countries in the world that didn't have a domestic league. So all of these players that you see nowadays on the men's national team, like Alphonso David, Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, Eustachio, among many others, they played in like a semi-professional league in Canada called League One. And from there, either they turned heads around and headed to MLS teams. Some of them went to like second, third tiers divisions in Europe. So like what could Canada as a whole be 5, 10 years down the road with a true domestic league that gives this developmental pathway to these teenagers that exist, because the talent that exists there. And I'm going to give all of you guys a quick example that we did last year. So we purchased the club about a year and a half ago. And when I got there with my brother in January, we basically did some like open trials kind of thing. And we had this kid, 15 years old. He's Canadian / English. And all of a sudden, week 1, 15 years old. He's surprised us. Me, my brother, and my GM were like, wow, 15 years old. Then we invited him to Mexico for preseason. He was with us for a couple of months. Then we went back to Canada. The season started in April. We signed him, just turned 16-year-old. And after a couple of months later, he made his first team debut. He scored a couple of goals. And all of a sudden, Jesse March, the Canada head coach for the senior team, invited him to train with the first team. And obviously you had press among like, how can this all of a sudden 16-year-old kid start spinning heads around? But that's just like a small glimpse of like the quality that exists in the area. At York, we want to be that sort of trampoline, that Benfica, Ajax type of team in Canada that helps these players develop.
You live indeed, York is in the vicinity of Toronto, so you have a 7 million density. I don't know how it's going, the discussion so far, but I must say I'd like to give some good feed for the guys who listen, because none of you are on the phones. So it means so far it's interesting. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Zineb, question for you about the success, because I guess with your different function, from a player to a manager, to an executive, to an agent, to an investor, how do you measure actually success for football? Because it must have evolved in your different hats on.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, success is, for me, I mean, as a player, it's very short term. Like, it's result driven. It's really just staying fit, being selected, making the game, scoring goals, winning games, making leagues, winning titles, and so on. I think the longer you go is like, what team I'll play next, where I want to go. I think from the agency perspective, our whole idea on how we tackle and guide the athletes was just not looking at the athletes on the pitch, but really off the pitch, and kind of drive that performance, but also the purpose for that person to thrive after his football career. And obviously, like when we are down supporting, let's say, clubs, it's also a different aspect, because you have to wear your kind of hats to understand what's the strategy, how can you kind of leave an impactful memory to the club. I think that's what most of the club are kind of trying to build, and as well, like looking at different aspects of if there's going to be a turnover, how can you be resilient to that turnover? That's very important as well, to have the sustainability. So I think for me, I think success has been a bit shifting across on how we approach it, more from a centric perspective, to kind of how do we make others win and succeed, and kind of moving more towards a legacy mindset.
Thank you, Zineb. That's very, very interesting, because the perception changed a lot depending on the function, but also in geography. And coming back to you, Ricardo, because one of the things that's always interesting, and this is something I witness when I speak with investors, when they suggest and they ask, should we come with new people, or should we actually keep the teams on site? And coming from Mexico to York, coming from a new environment, it certainly brings a lot of new additional challenges. And you still have those lieutenants who are based in the club, who did everything, and depending on the story of the club, they are there for sometimes years, if not decades. In Italian club, I met a guy who said, I'm working 52 years already in the club. So, you probably keep such type of guys, probably, I'm saying. And so how do you find actually the balance between bringing your own people to the efficiency of your objective and blending with the local guys who obviously have the local connection, the local relationship with the environment? So how did you deal with that?
Yeah, this is a great question. Great question. And
thank you.
I think I guess time will tell if we did the right moves. There's a thin line about who do you bring, because obviously we brought, not many, but we brought some people from Mexico. And at the same time, also we need local people, right? So it's like a very thin line of who do you keep, start to getting to know them. And honestly, we were a bit surprised in the sense that, at least I wasn't prepared for that. I thought in some ways Canada was more similar than the States, in the sense that when pandemic struck in 2020, obviously everything around the world changed. But in Canada, like home office became a real thing. And like major companies in Canada probably people go once, maybe twice every 15 days to work at the corporate office. So all of a sudden, we inherit a team that had been working for 4 years from their home office. And so how you get to know them on a regular basis. And not only that challenge, also when you're interviewing for jobs, people in their 20s, the major races, like when you're interviewing them and you're like, okay, good profile, all of a sudden they ask you, well, how many days am I supposed to come to the office? And so we set up the parameter to say, you know what, we're going to put on hold the home office. Everybody has to come back to the corporate office. And all of a sudden, like, people started falling from the project, right? And so when you start hiring local people, these good profiles say, well, I got to go to the office. I mean, and Toronto's like 7 million people, so it's a big city. And they say, well, no, thank you. So you also have that challenge that I never thought I would have, right? Again, I think time will tell where's the balance. Right now we brought in like 4 or 5 people from Mexico. And also the diversity that exists in Canada. Like, you have people that have like double citizenship, right? We have people that are from Canada and China, Canada and Portugal, Canada and Italy. So it's also those, I won't call major factors, but those factors that to begin with you don't think about that much. It's a reality.
But I guess this is precisely what brings a lot of value also to live in such a cultural, diverse background. And the 1 million pesos question for you, what can Mexico actually could learn from Canadian perspective, and what would you bring from Canada to Mexican football, and why? 1 million?
How much time do we got? Because I can speak along here. So a couple of things. The reality is that Canada right now, they need that Mexican heritage. That at least I can tell you, I was lucky enough to be born in a family surrounded by football people, and that football culture doesn't exist quite yet there. Canada has many other advantages to Mexico, especially from the cultural perspective, like the treatment of the people, the education that the majority of people in Canada get a major education. But like, I mean, I can talk about this for hours. Like, what can we bring to the Canadian culture from the Mexican? The best thing I can summarize it is these, especially kids, let's say 13 and younger, we need to inject them that soccer culture, that soccer passion, that and not just like as a recreational sport. And yeah, that's a major thing.
So we have a topic already for the organizer of World Football Summit to invite us next year. Thank you very much. When we speak with you, Andrew, it's usually about numbers, but I will ask you about feelings. Feelings to San Diego, and of course, you know, the overall success of a football team is often related to artistry of players, and I wanted to ask more about predictability and how much does it play a role, because in the end, how much do you think a scientific approach with algorithms, obviously we talk a lot around AI, LLMs, etc., measurements and productivity can be increased. Compared to other sports, you have experience maybe as athlete, coach, and executive. Do you think football is more or less apt for actually the Moneyball approach?
So I always get this question. So I won't give you the same answer though, because as time goes on, you get exposed to different experiences in different clubs, and you see the different perspective. I think, you know, I always say if I graduated 5 years earlier, I wouldn't have a job. The concept of analytics within MLS specifically has really only blown up in the last 5 to 7 years. I'll take one perspective from the corporate strategy side. The bittersweet, or the double-edged sword, I would say, of being an expansion club is that we have no historical data, we have no established processes, so it's open season, more or less. And that made me flex a different muscle that I had not had to use before, in that I didn't have numbers to rely on. So that's really helped me hone, at least for my personal skill set, more of the tangentially related concepts to running strategy for a football club. And obviously every club is different. You know, I started off in Portland in 2017 as a coach, and then transitioned into the USL, and then joined Nashville in 2020 in their inaugural season as a scout, before going to New England and then coming here. Like, there's such a wide range of experiences within that. I think there is, across all American sports, there's a desire to create some sort of silver bullet that can solve all your problems. You know, baseball kind of has the edge in that they had been able to develop WAR, which is a stat that you can compare across all positions. You know, in the emerging concept in American soccer right now is a concept called goals added, developed by some researchers at American Soccer Analysis, that is supposed to, you know, replace the shortfalls of XG in analyzing the game or analyzing individual players. And if it sounds like I'm dancing around the question, that's because I am. It's because there isn't an answer. You know, there's some clubs that, quote unquote, will play the game from a spreadsheet, and there's some clubs who will have an analytics staff, and the coach will look at their report and he'll say, okay, cool, and the coach and the sporting director will still go do what they want. I'm not saying there's a right way and a wrong way. MLS is very complex. I think it does require an analytical background to be successful, based on the roster rules and regulations and how we can build our teams. We are very lucky to have someone like Tyler running our sporting organization, having been an analyst, essentially starting up the analytics team at the U.S. men's and women's national team for 8 years before going to Monaco, and then coming to San Diego through Right to Dream. So we are lucky to have leadership in a position where they have had the experience to understand the role that data can play. Because I think oftentimes you bring in numbers into an organization that historically has operated off of feelings, and I think there can be some rough conversations there. So all that being said, I always go back to the people first, and that's why we built the organization the way we did, is to have the right people establish the processes that are flexible. And I think at this point we've achieved a good balance, but we got to start it all over for next season, and who knows what could happen. But
thanks for that.
Olivier, if I may add to what's actually Andrew was saying, it's actually very tricky to always find the right balance, because you have to rely on all the data, all the financial accuracy, everything, you know, that is very, I would say, coming from a more multinational aspect of running a football club, and you have all the, I would say, relational intelligence that you have to really adapt to, like you're kind of dealing with a cultural institution. Because I mean, in football, yes, you have a product which is your match game result, but it's so tied to, you know, deep emotion, to identity, to, you know, social capital. So you have so many interactions that it's very hard to kind of like shift the wind towards you. You have to go in sync with both aspects. It's very hard to just kind of pick one. It's I think, like, honestly, most of the clubs that has been successful have been able to have a good balance between both. That's what we kind of saw across.
I'm going to ask a question to the audience. Actually, who do you think is the club owner, el propietario, is the most important element to success of a club? Please you raise your hand if you think the owner is the most important. Raise your hand. Ah, grande. Who thinks is the coach? Who thinks are the players? And who thinks is the sponsor? Okay. So I'm good to inform you half of the room has no opinion. What do you think, Andrew, brings teams success?
If I look at the most, and I'm going to talk about this from a lens from MLS, we look at the long-standing, historically success franchises in MLS. It all started with owners that are willing to invest in areas that they will not see an immediate return. We look at the ability to establish and create a sustainable roster through both developing homegrown players, the college draft, and then competitiveness in the international transfer market. And namely, the three franchises that come to mind are the Philadelphia Union, Sporting Kansas City, and Real Salt Lake. I'll throw in FC Dallas as well because they have, I believe, turned over the most American homegrown players to European clubs as an MLS team. So along those lines, the clubs that I've described have also had some of the longest tenured head coaches in the league. And they are not changing sporting directors every 2 years. No. That isn't to say that it was a resounding success out of all of those clubs in the last 20 years. There have been, I believe, 2 or 3 MLS Cups combined between them. So it's not to say that it's all guided towards winning trophies, but if I look at truly what's the benefit of growing the game of soccer in the United States, it's about putting the players first and developing the players. And those are the clubs that are doing it, and they're doing it very well. Now, winning a shield at the end of a regular season versus winning a trophy in a cup competition like MLS Cup versus winning Leagues Cup versus winning US Open Cup, those are all different opportunities for clubs to establish themselves as successful. I think we want to use MLS Cup as the barometer for success, as it's an American sports league. We have to have a championship. We have to have playoffs. But from that, I think we'd be foolish to assume that the MLS Cup winners are solely the ones that are the best at building rosters and the best at developing players and coaches, because it's just not true.
So one of the most important person in the group mentioned also that group owners are the most important. I guess you will fully concur with that idea. But how do you measure actually success for your? What would be the
This is a very good topic in a sense that just to put some example here from some of the familiar faces I see here in this room, because I see quite a few soccer experts here. And I think success starts all the way, obviously, from the front office, but it's also a combination of knowing your strengths and knowing your weakness and how to delegate, right? Me, in my personal opinion, I'm going to compare soccer to the other sports, especially in the States, NBA, MLB, NFL, in the sense that general managers are the ones that mostly have the authority to build a roster, especially with salary caps, right? In soccer, you see sometimes head coaches that want the full control. Sometimes you see presidents and owners that want full control. So again, this is very personal, and every single one of you may have different opinions. But I truly believe that there should be a front office, president, then a general manager, that's the one that takes final decisions on rosters, head coach, and beyond that. And I think truly success, not just soccer teams. You see NFL teams, you see NBA teams, you see like these teams that, as Andrew said, like have a project, like short, medium, and long-term goals, and they basically have the same staff for many years, usually are the ones that have success down the road. So I think, again, soccer, there may be different perspectives, different opinions about who should have the control of it. My opinion, every team should have a GM, and that is the one that should have the final decisions in all roster spots.
Mindful of the time, I saw the other room already was about to finish. I'm not sure from World Football Summit if we still have time for questions. But basically, to wrap up this panel, I just also wanted to ask you, and maybe starting from you, Andrew, what are the 2, 3... well, actually, no. I have a new question. If you would meet Andrew 10 years ago, what advice you would give him to be even a more successful club manager?
I'd say, number one, I'd say keep it simple, stupid. And number two, I say, it's going to take time. Might not take 10 years, but patience is key. That's the most important thing.
Good. Thank you for that good knowledge. Ricardo, if you would meet the younger Ricardo 10 years ago, what would you tell him? Never go to York?
I think it would be, you should have done this earlier in your life and get in the soccer landscape earlier than you did.
Okay. Thank you. Good one. And you, Zineb, I mean, it's actually, for those who don't know Zineb, she has a Moroccan background, works from the Emirates, different markets. I really like Zineb because every time we meet 2 times, 3 times per year, and it's always at World Football Summit. So next time we're going to see each other somewhere in different location of the globe. So you travel a lot. And now the question, so what would you give to yourself as an advice?
Well, I think, to be honest, I mean, my journey has been always kind of marked with resilience across, whether as I started in women's football, as agent, and so on. So I think, you know, it would be the same. Just keep going and keep pushing, and you know, never give up. That's always the motto.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Andrew, Ricardo, Zineb, for your sharing your thoughts. I'd like to also thank you very much the members of this industry room to come and listen us. Thank you very much, and wishing you all the best, and have a great Club World Cup to start with. For our host, I'd like to thank you, obviously, World Football Summit. Thank you also for, I'm working in the accessibility area, so I'm also very happy that we have a transcription, which helps a lot, so that's great. And obviously for the hosts of the city of Monterrey to have a good preparation for the World Cup. Thank you very much, Andrew, Ricardo, Zineb. Thank you.